Good morning and welcome to Backchat. I'm Hugh Chiverton, your co-host today, Nixie Lamb. Nixie, good morning to you.
Good morning.
Today we're talking about the future of electric vehicles. The Financial Secretary has pledged to further promote the replacement of conventional private cars by electric vehicles, EVs. The Environment Bureau will announce later this month Hong Kong's first roadmap on the popularisation of electric vehicles, with key measures including the ceasing of the new registration of fuel-propelled private vehicles in 2035. No petrol cars after 2035. Is that a reasonable target? What are the pros and cons of that? Do we have enough facilities to charge EVs? What should we do with the batteries? What else do we need to make the switch? And what about commercial vehicles, taxis, minibuses? How about promoting rental schemes? Let us know your thoughts. You can leave a message on our Facebook page, Backchat and RTHK Radio 3, or you can email us, backchat@rthk.hk, or you can call us, and our number is 233-88266. We'd love to hear from you, 233-88266, your thoughts on electric vehicles in Hong Kong. Just before we get to that topic, let's just share a quick email. This is from Doug with a cautionary tale. Doug says, Dear Backchat, I spent a frustrating couple of hours this morning, so that was yesterday, trying to book a BioNTech vaccination. I rigorously followed the instructions to input my data, but found the system would not allow me to confirm my booking and referred me back to my name and mysteriously advised, please match the format requested, which is to input your name as shown in the ID card, Hong Kong ID card. But this is precisely what I'd done. After many fruitless attempts, including changing my browser, I called the designated hotline to be advised that they'd refer the issue to the department, but it could take 10 days to respond. Ridiculous, as by then the vaccination slots may well be exhausted. Do you know what he was doing wrong, Nixie?
Well, it's basically, I think if you log into the busiest time, which is like 9 o'clock sharp, that will happen. So it's really difficult for elderly to actually book online. So we were helping a lot of the elderly to book their bookings. I got a phone call about 2 days ago trying to book. I mean on Monday. And they've been trying from 9 to 11 until they couldn't handle it anymore. And they called me up and just sent me information. Can you just do that registration for me? And I can do that within 8 minutes. So it's really about the time.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So
well, he is elderly, actually. He does say that some of my friends are of a similar age to myself, so over 75.
Yeah.
They had a problem, but there was a specific problem, and I don't know if you.
Not
had this.
really sure about that.
Well, I'll tell you what it is.
Okay.
Because he says, I then had a touch of inspiration, and I omitted the comma after my surname. Albeit it is shown on the Hong Kong ID card. And voila, the booking went through. Given my experience, I suggest you advise listeners to omit the comma when booking. I've also gone back to the hotline and drawn this matter to its attention with a request that the department clarify its requirements on the booking form. I guess if you're putting in the Chinese name, there's no comma, so it's easier.
Yeah,
more straightforward. Anyway, there you go. Don't use the comma. Thanks, Doug, for that tip. Yeah. Joining us for our... we'll be talking to various people. We're going to start off this morning talking about electric vehicles with Mark Webb-Johnson, chairman of Charged Hong Kong, and Keith Martin, who's chairman of the Classic Car Club from 2017 to 2020. And Alex Hung will be joining us after the news at 9. Mark Webb-Johnson, good morning to you.
Good morning.
Thanks for joining us once again. Good to talk to you. So we're going to get, as I say, a sort of the full story from the Environment Bureau. We hope fairly soon about what the government is going to do. But we have had this quite dramatic commitment, basically, that they will stop issuing licences for petrol cars from 2035. How do you feel about that? Is that feasible? Is that a realistic target? What do you think?
Yeah. Well, firstly, I mean, it's great to have a target date. I mean, Charged Hong Kong and others have been asking for this for several years now. And it gives us a line in the sand that we can work to, something like Kennedy's, by the end of this decade, we'll go to the moon. So, from our point of view, we think it's very achievable. I mean, if you look at the dates announced by other countries around the world, 2035 is kind of like middle of what they're saying. Some are saying 2030, 2035, 2040. So it seems very achievable to us.
Okay. What's happening in other places? Do other places have a kind of similar kind of cut-off?
Yes. So pretty much all the developed countries around the world have announced a similar date. I mean, it's really a strange thing, because I mean, if you're a government who's in power for 4 years, announcing a date 10, 15 years in the future really doesn't have any binding attributes. But at least it gives a target that people can work to, and it gives warning. It gives a warning to the petrol car companies and the diesel car companies that this is what we're working towards.
Right. But I think at the moment there isn't that many electronic cars available. I mean, I myself drive a smart electronic car, and it seems a bit difficult to charge my car in some of the areas in Hong Kong. I mean, in New Territory, I think around Mont Shan or Sha Tin area, there isn't that many charging ports that is available. And do you think that could be possibly improved? I think it's quite difficult, isn't it? For those older malls and stuff.
Okay, I mean, there's two real issues regarding this date. I mean, things we have to achieve before 2035 to achieve this target. I mean, firstly, this is not going to be any petrol cars on the road in 2035. This is going to be we'll stop putting new petrol cars on the road at that date. So we have until that date to start the migration, or to proceed with the migration. So the two biggest issues are charging and availability of the choices of vehicles, right? So on the availability side, that really seems okay now. I mean, even today we have choices from, a few $100,000 up to millions of dollars, sports cars, 7-seaters, two-seaters, there's a whole variety, as well as some electric motorcycles.
Sorry, are there those electric cars in Hong Kong on our streets? Because I know Tesla, you see a lot of Teslas, and you see smart cars, but I don't know of any others. I don't recognise them.
Yeah, like the Leafs and also some Korean cars as well.
Yes,
available.
There's Hyundai, there's Leaf,
only one.
Porsche now is producing one. Even nowadays there's quite a few, and in the next 15 years, obviously, I think there's going to be more and more and more. But the issue pointed out was charging. That's primarily the biggest issue. Is how can we transition from using petrol stations to charging in our parking spaces? So the government has started that quite well. I mean, a few years ago, they basically mandated that new buildings must have all the spaces EV charging enabled.
Yeah, I see some of them.
And so by 2035, that policy will have been in place for about 20 years. So basically, at 2035, any building built in the past 20 years should be enabled for EV charging. For the existing buildings, that's a bigger problem, the older buildings. So what the government has done recently, about a year or so ago, and they've just started to approve the applications, is they've got a $2 billion fund which buildings can tap into to retrofit charging into their existing car parks. So that's not going to cover 100% of the spaces, but between the two of them, we should have a large proportion of spaces in Hong Kong covered.
Is there a proportion where all buildings, is there you can apply for half of the space to become EV space or anything like that?
The scheme the government has done is that 100% of the spaces have to be converted.
100%?
Yeah, of a particular building car park. So if you want to apply for the scheme, you have to apply to get all your spaces converted. I mean, I think the reason for that is that they just want to migrate everybody to the system, and they don't want arguments that space A has got it and space B doesn't.
Because at the moment you might get a few of those charging points you see in car parks.
Yeah, you might just have one.
Yeah,
sometimes.
But you can't. It's hard to imagine every car in the car park.
And it's a problem, like for me, I drive the Smart, it doesn't go that far. You have to charge your car every day. Then if you're running out of electronics and then you go into a car park and then there's only one space, then when you go in and then you figure out, that's it's full, then what can you gonna do? You have to go out and you have to pay for the fee and things like that. It's complicated.
It is a problem today. I mean, a lot of people, of our membership, about 50% are relying on public charging.
Yeah.
And that's the situation where you've got a couple of public charging spaces in a big car park, and it's problematic.
But is it free? Do you pay for the electricity when you plug in?
Most of them are free, but
most of them are free. So it's like filling up your car for free.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. So
That's
all the
American,
government
like,
ones are free, and most of the CRP, Hong Kong Electric, are free still.
Yeah.
But I'm actually, I mean, that's obviously a great incentive for electric vehicles, but longer term, it's kind of a disincentive. So, why would a commercial company work with a car park to put in EV charging if the competition is free?
Mm.
Okay, our number is 233-88266. I think we've got Mike on the line now. Mike, good morning.
Well, I just came on the line to read my email that I sent to you, Hugh.
Uh-huh.
And, it starts out, Green New Deal. Please pay attention. Ask yourself, why go green? I mean, why go electric? It's cool. That's right. It's quiet. That's good. It puts the pollution somewhere else. Yes. Government is getting our minds off the real issues by showing us a shiny new object. Bingo. The idea makes the masses think government is doing something good. You're starting to see the picture. If that is why you're going electric, well, kudos to you. If you're going electric for the environment or to decrease your carbon footprint, we need to talk. And hopefully, if you're thinking and clear and open, going electric will not help you reach that goal. Full stop.
Mark Webb-Johnson, do you want to respond to that?
I mean, it's some good points. I mean, obviously, switching from petrol to electric does not zero your emissions. But it does do a few things. Firstly, electric vehicles are far more efficient in consuming their fuel than petrol vehicles. I mean, petrol vehicles, you're talking maybe 20%, and electric vehicles, 60-70% efficiency. Secondly, as the caller mentioned, it's moving the pollution, as well as reducing it, it's moving it from the roadside, where people are breathing, to distant places where the power is generated. And it's vastly simpler to reduce the emissions in a few power stations than it is to reduce the emissions on 1 million cars on the road.
But wait. Those cars have to be powered by a battery. How much pollution, overall pollution on the planet, do you think lithium mines are, or the disposal of those batteries when you're through with them? And I'll just make one more point, and I'll get off and let you guys talk. But the power grid wouldn't, if 10% of of cars went electric today, the power grid couldn't handle it, and you will have to redo your entire city's power grid in order to charge 10% of the vehicles that are here now.
Oh, what's the source of that information, Mike?
The experts that I deal with every day, and they explain to me why and how much electricity it really takes to charge lithium batteries in a car, and how if you had 10% of the automotive fleet, he said your system wouldn't even handle it. So do the research on that, and I think it'll be very clear.
Where should we do the research, Mike? Where should we?
Well,
can we talk to your friends?
You can start out. You can start out by talking to some electronic engineers.
Is there a website or anything where you get this information?
I can get that information to you.
Yeah, send me some links. That would be good. We could.
All right, because it's a subject I've been studying for 10 years. The most efficient vehicle would actually be a diesel charged. Have a vehicle with a small diesel charged diesel engine that drove a generator. And if you wanted to have the most efficient vehicle, that would give you the most efficient vehicle.
Okay, Mike, thanks very much indeed for your call.
Appreciate it.
233-88266 is the number. Also joining us is Keith Martin, chairman of the Classic Car Club, as I say, from 2017 to 2020. Mr. Martin, good morning to you.
Yeah, good morning.
Thanks for joining us and for sticking around. Are you a fan of EVs, or do you like the old, are you a petrol head?
Yes, I am a petrol head. I don't own a EV. I have 2 points really. That I live in an older building in mid-levels, and the management spend a lot of money putting a big ring around the car park to supply charging for the 3 or 4 electric vehicles we have, and then found they couldn't put the wiring in because of the current type or size was not suitable. So, and my building is 50 years old, so I think that's one problem. Is you can put all the facilities there, but then you have to get the power in. So in my case, we have what looks like a charging wire. And no one can charge electric cars. That's the first thing. And the second thing is that if you go on the government website about pollution in Hong Kong, 2 things really hit you straight away, which really staggered me. And I'm not a Greenpeace, or I'm not anti electric cars, but they say quite clearly that 18% of the pollution in Hong Kong is caused by by transport. It doesn't specify exactly which transport, 18%. And 65.6% is caused by power generation emissions. So, I mean, that's amazing. So 65, and that's a government website. They're from 2018. So the trouble is that we have such a dirty way of making power in Hong Kong compared to, say, Norway or France, which is nuclear. Norway's hydroelectric. We're making electricity to charge cars, but 65.6% of that is causing the biggest emissions in Hong Kong. So I'm just slightly puzzled why electric vehicles are suddenly going to clean the air when we need more power to charge them, and therefore we'll have more emissions caused by power generation. And that's on the government website.
I think one part of the pollution is actually done by some of the vessels coming in and out on cargoes. So,
well, I don't think so. It says power generation. I don't.
No. I mean for the car sector or vehicles sector. I don't know.
Or transport.
From the
transport.
Yes,
you might be right. Sorry,
yes,
correct.
I think that caused a big problem.
So, again, according to the website for carbon-free website, it says that a little a hybrid car, car is as good as an electric car. If you take away the amount of pollution generated by electricity, and then the pollution generated by a car, a small Toyota Prius Echo doesn't make any difference to the pollution. So these smaller hybrid cars, which your earlier caller mentioned, it's probably as good as a pure electric car because it doesn't require so much power to charge it up. I mean, that's just what I was just looking at the internet. But I think that the problem is that a lot of people like to live in the past, but think forward. So classic car owners, half of them, a lot will have electric cars, but they want something like instead of a painting on a wall or something, they want a classic car. And the amount of times that these classic cars are used, when I'm driving mine, I always try to think, well, I'm only using it once a week, so I'm not generating that much pollution. Of course, that's probably slightly false, but I think that as Mark Webb Johnson said, it's not a panacea. Electric cars are not a panacea for stopping the pollution by transportation. It's not going to fix it immediately.
Right. Is there anyone that's trying to convert their classic cars to electronic cars? Because
it's a huge business.
Yeah.
All the big, the old cars like Jaguars. Sorry, not all. There are several companies now converting old British classic cars into electric cars, so they look the same, and they're quite expensive, but it is an industry in itself now. So
did it kill the fun? Because you're driving, and some of my friends they like to drive the older cars and the engine sounds and stuff like that.
Yeah, of course, everybody likes to run around with the engine making a lot of noise. The trouble in Hong Kong is registering a car. I mean, Hong Kong is such a tricky place to register anything that's off the wall or slightly different. So I think you would have trouble generally trying to register a 50-year-old car with an electric engine in, whereas in America and Europe it is a lot easier. But so Porsches, Jaguars, Austin Healey, they are now all converting cars to electric, and there is a following for that.
But I know someone who was driving an electric car and then switched to a non-electric car and really missed driving the electric car because the electric car has very direct power.
Yes.
Yeah, and it can accelerate in a way that a petrol car, especially an old petrol car, can't. And it's actually much more fun driving if you enjoy that kind of thing.
So
it's actually much more fun driving an electric car.
That's my husband. He likes to drive an electric car.
Because they accelerate much better.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like driving a golf buggy on the road, I guess. Like driving a golf buggy.
Is it? Is it like driving a golf buggy?
I assume so. You're talking to a guy that's never driven one, so I'm the wrong person.
You're dissing Nix's car now. You're calling it a golf buggy.
Yeah, I drive a smart car, so that it doesn't matter. It's not like a Tesla or something.
It is like a golf buggy.
Yeah.
Mark Webb-Johnson, do you want to respond?
Yeah, I mean, there's been some discussions over the years on sort of whether EV is actually good for the environment or bad, etc. I mean, I would respond basically by saying that every EPD, every environmental protection agency around the world is saying the same thing, that when you compare apples to apples, cradle to grave, an EV is better than a hybrid and than a petrol or a diesel car. It is, from the point of view of the grid, that was the other comment which Mike mentioned. I've spoken to both CLP and Hong Kong Electric, neither of which are worried at all about the grid. They both say that the problem is quite often on old buildings. The transformers are really, really old. So, this guy's comment of a 50-year-old building. I mean, your transformer in that building is perhaps 50 years old. If you replace the transformer, which CLP or Hong Kong Electric are willing to do, with a latest model taking up the same floor space, etc., you get about a 30 to 40% increase in power availability. So neither of those electrical grid companies are worried about it. The other comments on driving electric versus petrol, etc., I tend to agree. I mean, obviously, I'm kind of biased, but if you drive an electric car, it's quite an amazing feeling. I mean, there's no lag, there's no gear changes. I know a lot of people, particularly in the classic car club, will enjoy the noise of the engine, the noise of the exhaust, and the feel of the car, and I do too. And electric cars are very, very different. So I would encourage you to, come along and try an electric car and see how it behaves.
Do a little exchange of experience.
I think if you go on carbonbrief.org, it actually discusses hybrids and electric cars, and hybrids do come out really, really well in their plans and in all their charts. So I really wouldn't want to dismiss hybrids as quick as you do. I don't think they're as bad as you say.
Hybrids are a lot better. I mean, but I think I'm not sure what carbonbrief.org is. But if you go to the U.S. EPA site, that's it's a fairly independent site, and they're looking at this, and they publish. You can put in the make of the car, and you can compare fuel consumption figures, etc. And the EVs will come out much better. At that side also you can put in how dirty the grid is, so you can say, hey, I'm in deepest Alabama, which is a pretty filthy grid, and you can see the behavior of different sorts of cars.
Okay. Well, Keith, thank you very much indeed for joining us. Keith Martin there, who was chairman of the Classic Car Club from 2017 to 2020. The carbonbrief.org is funded by the European Climate Foundation and has won a highly commended award from the Royal Statistical Society. So I don't know. Seems legit. We're going to continue the discussion after the news at 9. The weather forecast, mainly cloudy with a few rain patches. Maximum temperature today up to about 21 degrees, and the outlook a few rain patches in the next couple of days. Humid with fog on Saturday. And the readings at the moment, 18 Celsius with a relative humidity now at 85%. Back for more in 3 minutes' time. Welcome back. This is Backchat on a Thursday morning with Nixie Lamb and me, Hugh Turton. We're talking about electric vehicles, promoting their use. In Hong Kong, the financial secretary has said that they're going to stop giving licenses to petrol cars in 2035. How is that going to work? What do we need to do to reach that target? That's what we're talking about this morning. We're joined by Mark Webb-Johnson, chairman of Charged Hong Kong. We're also joined now by Alex Hung, founding chairman of Hong Kong New Emerging Technology Education Association. We want to hear from you as well. Pick up the phone and join in. 233-88266 is the number, or you can email backchat@rthk.hk. A lot of emails are on this topic. I hope I don't repeat or miss people out. A couple on vaccinations, which we'll get to later. Anton Norak says no internal combustion engine vehicles from 2035. What is not clear and seems not to have been stated is whether this will be sale of ICE vehicles or use of ICE vehicles. The phrase issuing of licenses is not clear on this point. Whether it's new vehicles or not. Benjamin says, electric vehicle use in Hong Kong, environmentally friendly. Where do you think the vast majority of this electricity comes from? It comes from burning coal and gas, not from wind power or solar power, but from burning fossil fuels. So how is that environmentally friendly? The only truly environmentally friendly car is the Aptera, which can run on solar power in addition to electric charging. That comes from Benjamin. Paul Zimmerman has a simple message. He says, reduce roadside air pollution. That is where most people breathe. Jeffrey says, does this also apply to motorcycles? I think he's a motorcyclist. Since cars have more choice for electric, but motorcycles still have a problem getting electric vehicles made, even produced, and the choice is very limited. And based on the Hong Kong police experience, was not workable at this time, which means may not be available by 2030. CW says a hydrogen cell is greener and will likely be a challenger to batteries in EVs. GT says, it seems Mike is using the usual hearsay arguments to justify a statement of a proven bias and inability to see the bigger picture, such as solve one problem at a time, centralise the pollution, and then work on battery technology improvement as an evolutionary step. That's from GT. LK says, the problem is cars. Doesn't matter if they're electric. Electric cars are still less efficient than trains and buses. With cars, most of the energy is spent moving metal, not people. And cars and charging stations guzzle fossil fuels. Several gallons of oil go into making each car tyre. Offshore the pollution to faraway places is ethically dubious. Fewer cars is the answer. That's from LK. Richard II says, EVs are not simply about reducing pollution. In fact, the worst car-related pollution, PM2.5s, come from brake and tyre wear. This will not change in EVs. The advantage of EVs is that they use far less material and energy resources to manufacture. A study published last week clearly shows EVs to be less resource-intensive over lifetimes, and that is important. However, using fossil fuels to power grids does not decarbonise the fleet, which is what is needed. So the grid generators need to be pushed, incentivised to renewables, and urgently, because we have very little time left to avoid more than 2 degrees centigrade warming. EVs will help reduce fossil fuel use, and that is necessary. They will use fewer resources, and that is necessary too. However, we need to reduce the number of cars on the road is also critical, because the growth in car numbers is unsustainable. So better electrified public transport should also be incentivised. This, together with improved pedestrian and cycle routes that are separated from motorised vehicles, are very much needed. That is from Richard II. Mike says, of course, the electric company would not object to or disclose what it would entail to change the grid. They could do it. It gives them work for the next decade. More dollars. That cost will be passed on to all. Jay says, you're helping the wealthy with all these electric cars, but why doesn't the government let the public run electric bicycles and electric scooters? Many people would abandon their car to use the bicycle if that were the case. Also, many people would like to put electric engines in their petrol cars, but they are restricted by rules and regulations. S says, thank you to Mike for his resourceful contributions on various topics. Wonder where Herman's and Anthony's are when it comes to such discussions which require intelligent input. Jeffrey says, further on the... Oh, but that's back on the vaccine. Maybe we'll get to that later and another time. Let's talk now to Alex Hung, as I say, founding chairman of the Hong Kong New Emerging Technology Education Association. Mr. Hung, good morning to you. Hi, thanks very much for joining us. So, I mean, you know, electric vehicles are progressing. Where are we up to? Where are the improvements? And, you know, what might electric vehicles look like in 10 years' time?
Okay, in fact, okay, there are many questions from different perspectives. And, okay, the first thing for electric vehicles, okay, for me, okay, a few years before I also wonder whether it's more environmental friendly. But after a few years study and also I also learned from different sources. Nowadays, okay, even in Hong Kong, the electricity providers, okay, there are only two in Hong Kong. They are having more renewable energies, okay, and more and more because of the government policy. Okay, they need to use more renewable energy, and actually on the road, okay, it's more environmental friendly, and it reduces the amount of pollution on the road. And okay, if you think whether we can do it by 2035 in 10 years, not more than 10 years. But in fact, in other countries, even some developed countries in Europe, they will have an even more aggressive target to have it on in 2030. And in fact, nowadays, even some cars, okay, I heard that some cars they can really change to electric, okay, and there's a foreseeable future, and more providers of electric car, and also the electric cells, even more affordable, and also make it more environmental friendly. And okay, that's okay. Whether we can make it okay into 2035. One point is about the small electric vehicle on the road. Okay, just like something like electric bicycle. In fact, I know the Hong Kong government started to have some pilot project on that, and that's good because it really can reduce the number of cars on the road. And also for the electric car, it's not only talking about the private car. We talk about the public transportation, the bus, the small, and also the taxi, and also even the motorcycle. And also one point about a motorcycle. Okay, I also wonder why in Hong Kong we can't have more motorcycles by electricity, because back to maybe 5 years or 6 years before, I found different models from China and also from Taiwan. They have some good facilities for motorcycle to be electrified. Okay, and that's what my input, and also some answers for the questions from other people today.
But I mean, is it possible? I mean, 2035. At the moment, I mean, as a electronic car driver, I think it's quite tricky to achieve that target. I mean, the implementation of EV charging ports around town in new older buildings and stuff like it seems a bit difficult, isn't it?
Okay, in fact, I'm one of the user of the electric car. Up to now, I use it after 4 years. 4th year, and then I have not much problem in charging. Okay, and also in fact the number of chargers in Hong Kong is really increasing. The only thing I think the government need to do more is to enforce some buildings, especially for the government buildings to have more chargers, and also the chargers with not the slowest one. Okay, the meaning of slowest one means they use only 13A electric pump, just like that in your home. And in fact, if we have more faster chargers, okay, that can be enforced to be built in most of the buildings, especially government buildings, schools, and also some public place, even the parking slot. That we can improve the situation a lot. In fact, if there's a real problem for the electric car owners, okay, there will be many cars stopped on the road, but that's not a real situation.
I think it really depends on which area you live in. From my understanding, in the New Territory Eastern side, there isn't that many charging ports that's available, and most of the people live in apartments in Hong Kong where it's really it's really difficult for them to have a charger of their own. So that's a big problem, and some of the owners' association doesn't allow you to to have charging ports. It actually brings up quite a discussion within the residents. A lot of people doesn't drive that, and then they have this argument why are they allowed to install something like that? So.
Actually, for the eastern part of New Territories, because of, in fact, a few years before it's better because we have many chargers in Science Park, and but there's some issues.
10.0, I think.
But the residential areas is tricky.
But even for the residential area, I live in my estate hasn't doesn't provide any chargers, and I maybe 2 to 3 days I go to the charger station to charge my car, and that's fine. Because in fact in Hong Kong, okay, one of the good thing is that the geographic area is very small, okay, comparing to other countries, and that's in fact we need not to have so many chargers. In fact, every day if you need to charge, you need to drive more than 100 kilometers. It's not very usual, okay? And then for the usual car, you can drive at least 200 kilometers. So, in fact, that's okay. In fact, if we have more chargers, just like the petrol station in Hong Kong, okay, we have too many petrol stations. Okay, you can see everywhere, but we don't have so many private chargers, just such as the same as that of the petroleum stations. Okay, that's a problem. Why the government can't have more such kind of electric stations rather than having more petroleum stations.
Okay, one more email. Sorry, I missed this from earlier. This is from Matthew, who says, when I looked into getting an electric vehicle in Hong Kong, I was told that the net environmental benefit is minimal or zero because the vast majority of electricity in the UK, in Hong Kong, is generated by coal-fired power stations rather than environmentally favourable sources. Can any experts comment on whether this is true or not? If it is the case, then aren't past and future subsidies for electric cars in Hong Kong simply subsidies to support the business interests, China Light and Power, Li Ka-shing, and the CCP's new best friend Elon Musk, rather than improve the environment? That is from Matthew. On the question of the net environmental benefit, we mentioned earlier a carbon brief .org. I think it was Keith Martin who recommended that. I've just been sort of glancing over the site. It's very detailed. It has very extensive, exhaustive accounts of things like comparisons between conventional cars and electric vehicle emissions. But it's got a headline summary by 2019 because of the improvements in technology, and also changes to the source of electricity, at least in the UK. It says life cycle EV emissions were around 3 times lower than conventional cars. That means that that something like the Nissan Leaf used only a third of the emissions over its lifetime from a conventional car. That includes the manufacturing, that includes the tailpipe, that includes the fuel cycle, and that includes the batteries as well. Now, that is based on the electricity mix in the UK, which I don't know. I don't know whether it's cleaner than it is in Hong Kong. I suspect it is a little bit. There's probably more nuclear. But I don't know. But anyway, for what it's worth, you could, if you really want to go into the detail, have a look at that. Have a look at carbonbrief.org. The other issue I wanted to raise with both of you, Mark Webb Johnson and Alex Hung, is what's happening in Shenzhen and what we can learn from that. Mark Webb Johnson, because there's a lot of electrification and a lot of commercial vehicles, taxis and buses and things like that. They're all electric in Shenzhen, aren't they? Is that working well, and can we copy that?
It's working incredibly well in Shenzhen. I mean, they've done it's interesting because it's a very commercial enterprise over there, and they've worked out a way of doing this in a commercially beneficial manner, so they can get the benefits of the reduced emissions, but also make more money, or at least not lose money. So it's been kind of carrot and stick. The government's given this demand that you must move away, but then there's the benefit that the transportation costs, the fuel costs in particular, are lower for the electric vehicles. So I really think Hong Kong could learn from this. I mean, we're talking about private vehicles today, but the biggest amount of roadside pollution in Hong Kong is from the commercial vehicles. And obviously government has tried. They've introduced incentives. They've even paid for the vehicles in some cases under trials. But they've had a lot of trouble getting the commercial companies here to actually start a real serious migration to electric commercial vehicles. And I think that's sad. I think the government could help out by licensing. They could do similar to what Samjan did, which is carrot and stick. So you sort of, most of these commercial vehicles, taxis, buses, minibuses, school buses, tour buses, they're all controlled via licenses. And the government could say, okay, well, we're only issuing EV licenses gradually.
I mean, they switched to LPG, didn't they, for the taxis? I mean, it was a bit of an effort, but they managed it in the end.
Yeah, that's kind of like a hybrid, isn't it? I mean, you're changing from a polluting diesel to a less polluting LPG, which is beneficial, but it doesn't go the full way, which is what we need to do.
But what about the charging time? It takes quite a bit of time to charge your car versus just popping in your car in the petrol station and coming out after 5 minutes.
Well, Samjan seems to have solved it. I mean, they've basically looked at it and they've used different technologies. So, for instance, for taxis, they use a lot of battery swap technology.
Oh, so you can swap batteries these days.
So the battery, you buy the car and the battery is leased, whatever, and you turn up at a station and they swap the battery. For buses, you have solutions such as wireless charging under the bus stop, which works well. Hong Kong is slightly different here because we have a lot of double-decker buses and we have a lot of hills, which does make it challenging compared to Samjan. But from the minibuses, from the school buses, I really don't see the problem. I mean, school buses is a classic. I mean, my kids, the buses are sitting outside the school, spewing out diesel fumes for half an hour while the kids load up. And there's no reason those could not be migrated to electric vehicles now.
The battery swap idea that you go into a fuel station and just swap the battery, that would solve many of the problems about charging, wouldn't it? And about, putting in points around car parks and shopping centres. You just drive in and it's almost instant, basically.
I didn't
you
know
click
you
in
can
a new battery.
Change your battery.
I think part of the problem is that the government in Hong Kong looks at this on a per department basis. But that doesn't really solve the problem, because we have, transportation involves highways department, transport department, EPD, electricity generation, the whole grid, and it involves all these different departments, and they need to work together, which is why we're hoping that this roadmap, which is we've been waiting for years, and it's finally coming any day now, we're really hoping that sets forward a plan where these departments can work together to come up with a holistic solution.
And I think a lot of the commercial vehicles in Shenzhen are rented as well. They're not. Yeah. You have a supplier who will rent them out, which may be a different approach. Alex Hung, what do you think things work well in Shenzhen? And if so, are there lessons that we can learn here?
Actually, 3 to 4 weeks before I have been in Shenzhen, and then it's amazing. There's lots of chargers. Okay, even in a normal car park. Okay, you can see the charger everywhere, and then even for the taxi there, they charge at any time they want. Okay, in fact, if we have more chargers, we need not to stay to keep the car at the parking slot for a long time. Okay, maybe we take 30 minutes again, and then if you have another charger, okay, somewhere nearby, okay, you have the confidence to go from one point to another point, and then there's no problem for you to charge. Just like your mobile phone, you need not to charge 100%, and then use any time, okay. You will drop to maybe 30%, and then 20%, and then you can charge up to 45%, okay. And that's the logic, okay. If we can have more chargers everywhere, just like that case in Shenzhen. In fact, I have some friends, they drive for the cars from Hong Kong, okay, but not now, okay, but because of COVID-19.
All the way up to China.
All the way up to China, and then they have no problems to have to keep the car charged. Have the charging, and they have some planning of the charging, and then they can go to everywhere to charge the car. Yeah. And then the waiting time is less than that in Hong Kong, and that's why there are many. But one thing I want to point out is about the charging. We have different, just like the iPhone and Android phone. Okay, they have their different chargers.
Yeah, they have different plugs.
That's a problem. Okay, for the standardization of charging. But in fact, in China, okay, I heard from my friend in Shenzhen, it's more easy because they have maybe some more adapters, and also some the government they push to have more standardization of charging cable. Okay, but in Hong Kong, okay, that's another problem because if we have more electric car now in Hong Kong, different models from different car makers, but they don't have a standardized method of charging. And that means some cars they can charge in one spot, but they can't charge in another spot. And that's what the government can do. And one thing I want to point out is that apart from they are about electric car, they are handled by different departments and different bureaus. Okay, of course they can't really work together. But one more thing is about the committee. Okay, there's one committee about the electric car. But in my observation, in the last 5 to 6 years, okay, even 10 years, they don't drive an electric car.
I enjoy the committee. You and me.
That means they don't know how more.
They don't even understand the difficulties, right?
No, and also can't understand why the electric car is better. And that's the problem. If they have the community, all the people are the old guys, okay, from different backgrounds, okay, but they don't have any experience, and also to do it, and also to make it even better. Okay, I think it's not easy. So because they will have the roadmap very soon, okay, by this month. But I hope they can have they can put more rules from the public. Okay, just like what we are driving, and also many people they want to change their car from the petroleum car to electric car nowadays because actually it's more cleaner, and also the engine is more simple. Okay, the motor is more simple.
You don't need to repair your car that much. That's my experience.
Yeah. That's the good experience, and also in fact what we mentioned today is in fact is a more environmental friendly. One reason is that the efficiency of the motor is better than the petroleum car by 3 times. And also one more thing I want to point out is that petroleum in Hong Kong is the most expensive in the world. Okay, I have the experience is the 8 times.
That's why I changed my car.
And by using electricity, even you need to pay the bill for the electricity. Is my friend told me about 1/3 for the comparing to the petroleum car, and that's also one good reason for you to change to a new car of an electric car.
But what about the people who say you shouldn't have cars at all? The government should be putting this money into developing public transport,
cycling tracks or something.
Yeah,
like that.
or even electric bikes or whatever alternatives. Not encouraging expensive, fancy new cars, but reducing the number of cars overall.
Reducing. In fact, reducing the number of the cars is another topic. But we can make use of just like the transport department is planning, something like Uber, Lyft. Okay, there's some other services they can have a sharing of the cars. Okay, to make it possible to reduce the number of cars on the road. But that's another topic. Okay, electric car doesn't mean having more electric car means we can have more electric public transportation, electric motorcycle, even for the we try to reduce the number of the cars. Okay, I think the car sharing is more important than if you have more electric car, we'll drive more. But in fact, the demand of driving is not the same as what we need. Okay, hope you understand my point, because actually electric car may not help directly to solve the problem of the congestion in Hong Kong, but I think it's good for the environment. And,
Okay. One more comment from Matthew, coming back, who says it's surprising in a discussion about using our money to subsidise EVs, presumably for net benefit to the environment, that we are so freely glossing over whether they actually provide a net benefit to the environment, given that Hong Kong power is almost entirely from coal. Even more surprising that the expert guests advocating for the EV industry can't give a clear, fact-based answer to this fundamental question. That comes from Matthew. I would say, Matthew, in the guest defence, it is extremely complicated. And if you look on something like carbonbrief.org, you can see how there are many factors, like where the battery is constructed and things like this to take into account. It's quite a complicated comparison, although the headline on the carbonbrief.org is that electric vehicles do help to tackle climate change overall. And I guess the point about the not having clean fuel generation in Hong Kong is have both. Have cleaner fuel generation and cleaner cars. And if you have petrol cars, then you're never going to make it cleaner. MT says it seems that typically the government is taking a low-level focused approach rather than taking the opportunity to review the transport policy of Hong Kong as a major city beyond 2035. Note, a city, not a country, which has a dispersed population. For example, individual car ownership will be very minimal, buses on demand, and driverless vehicles as well. That's from MT. Mike says, GT needs an education, increased battery technology. Ask yourself why airlines ask you about lithium batteries, so much power in such a small package. Do you think you can put more power in a smaller package? Ask yourself again, do you want to carry or drive a potential bomb? Battery technology is at its max. Research is focused on more efficient systems, motors, lighting. So GT I don't go public with hearsay. Go back to your keyboard, or better yet, call 233-88266. And Jay says it all boils back down to the government. Hong Kong needs to build bigger, efficient electricity power stations running on rubbish and methane or effluent. These would be much better projects than the Lantau tomorrow and would create a lot of jobs. But first we need to manufacture good hearing aids. That comes from Jay. Thank you very much indeed for that. Finally, those comments on the vaccine. Jeffrey says, further on the booking an appointment for the vaccine, I'm 60 on the 14th of March. Happy birthday for then. But I was unable to book because it insists that I am over 60 today. So the website is definitely flawed and has problems. That comes from Jeffrey. I think it means that you are not over 60 today. John says, obviously most people will write to Backchat only if they have a bad experience trying to book a vaccination, but here's a bit of positive feedback. I had low expectations of having to wait a long time, no slots available, etc. But when I logged on at about 10 a.m. yesterday, I had no trouble in booking a slot for a BioNTech vaccination. I had to restart just once because the day I originally selected was fully booked, but the second try worked fine and I was finished in 15 minutes. At that point, to my surprise, lots of slots were available. So in 2 weeks, I'll get my first jab. Yay! That is from John. And Johnny says, in your earlier news broadcast this morning, you had comments from Alex Lam, chairman of Hong Kong Patients, in which he argued that the government needed to better explain the risks of the two vaccines. For example, he specifically referred to the government's warning on its vaccine website that the BioNTech Pfizer wasn't suitable for people aged over 85, while there was no such warning for the Sinovac jab. This is ironic, given that the Chinese government has reportedly not recommended Sinovac for its own elderly folk, while millions of elderly folk globally have received the BioNTech Pfizer vaccine. Indeed, Israel, whose vaccine program has arguably been the most successful in the world, has relied heavily on the Pfizer jabs and has specifically targeted the elderly. If the Hong Kong government fails to adopt a fully transparent approach to its vaccine program, it will struggle to convince the public to sign up. Moreover, because significant sections of the public remain unsupportive and cynical about the Lam administration, those that do sign up for the vaccine program will likely opt for the BioNTech Pfizer rather than the Sinovac. That is from Johnny. Thank you very much indeed, one and all, for emails. The weather, mainly cloudy with a few rain patches, maximum temperature about 21 degrees.